Last time, I illuminated the dungeon with a newly acquired flashlight, added heavy doors that require a full party to open them, started creating levels with the level editor, and started updating the art in The Dungeon Under My House, my second freshly squeezed entertainment project. If you've been following along, you know that The Dungeon Under My House will be a non-violent, first-person dungeon crawler, and as a freshly squeezed entertainment project, it will be a polished, playable prototype that provides a complete entertainment experience. It will be freely available for desktop computers as well as mobile devices, with no ads, no in-app purchases, and no personal data tracking. Hello and welcome. My name is Gianfranco Berardi. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I encourage curiosity and support creativity through my solo indie game development studio, GB Games LLC. I'm really happy that you're here to join me on this indie game development journey. Since last time, I've updated more of the dungeon art, which you might have noticed in the new intro, but more excitedly, I added some major features of the game, such as the concept of time, plus I updated a few other things. Let's take a look. After the dirt texture from the last video, I created some more varied art, including stone walls to replace the placeholder stone walls. I like how cartoony the world looks now, but I still would like to add some variety and provide the player with landmarks rather than a long wall of similar looking stones. In the large room, it now has bricks and a checkerboard floor, which I think looks great and gives the space the identity of a large connecting hub that I wanted. I'm still unhappy with that it shows up orange rather than red, even though I set up the lighting in here to be red, but I'm working on figuring out why the lighting code seems to behave differently between the walls and the floor and ceilings, as I suspect it has a little to do with it. Also, those red lights, there should be actual light bulbs or something in the room. Otherwise, why is this room glowing reddish-orange in the first place? One thing that I finally addressed in the intro sequence is the part where you discover the secret door in the basement to the second room, which has a ladder to the dungeon. I've added the ability to show arbitrary images during scripted dialogue, so I added these comic panel sequences that show the broom getting knocked over and hitting a secret button on the wall, which now explains how the secret door appears after you tried to look for a jar of pickles on the shelves. Once the intro sequence was finished and the art was updated, I spent some time really thinking hard about what the game should actually be about. The theme I settled on was, there's too much to do and not enough time to do it, which kind of feels like making this game. I've long planned the game to be limited to a few in-game days or a few weeks at most. It not only keeps the scope down so it's not going to take me forever to make the game, but it also keeps the focus of the game tight. And if I do it right, it can encourage replayability. So adding a concrete implementation of time into the game was urgent, as all other mechanics should work directly or indirectly with time somehow. It was, of course, very important that the player be able to track time, so I added a watch to the HUD that shows the current time and the day. Eventually, this watch will be a button that the player can press, and I envision being able to set alarms and reminders to help the player manage their time, but for now it just needed to display the current time and day. I also advanced time by 5 minutes whenever the player walks 30 steps in a dungeon. I don't think 5 and 30 will be the final numbers I use in the game, but it is a start. Along with managing time, managing the stamina of the party is something else I wanted the player to pay attention to. Stamina represents a particular party member's ability to perform activities, and maneuvering through the dungeon not only ticks away the clock as I mentioned earlier, but now also requires energy. But you can choose the rest in trading more time for a little energy back. It's not a fair trade though, so why would you do that? I'm still working on this part, but if party members run out of energy, they get exhausted, requiring other party members to use more energy to help them get through the dungeon. If everyone gets exhausted, well, I'm toying with the idea that you can't use those characters in the party the next day, which should represent a huge consequence of neglecting your party's energy, especially as I add more features that differentiate those characters from each other. Maybe one has a special skill you want to leverage, or maybe you just like a character because you named her after your best friend. Either way, you should feel protective of their stamina to avoid losing them for an entire day. After adding the ability to load JSON for the map from Tiled, I discovered that the Android version of the game would crash on startup, so I spent time ensuring that the game could load the map data properly on Android, and I did so in a way that means the game should load across all platforms without issue. Unfortunately, with the addition of new art, the ray-casted rendering of the dungeon is a lot slower due to needing to determine which image to use for the walls and floors and ceilings, and I will need to figure out how to optimize the algorithm some more to make sure the game doesn't feel laggy or stuttery. I also wanted to note that much of the work I've been focusing on involves adding major systems of the game, but I haven't talked too much about how they support the game's actual characters, activities, and spaces the player can explore. Obviously, I need to work on not just the capabilities I need for the game, but also the actual content of the game. Specifics for that content might be hard to come by even as I add them, as I need to be careful not to spoil it for those of you looking forward to experiencing the game for the first time. Thanks for watching, and stay curious. Now, if you want to learn when I release the Dungeon Under My House, or about future freshly squeezed entertainment games I am creating, then sign up for the GB Games Curiosities newsletter and download full colors player's guides to my existing and future games for free. Again, check the links in the description.